Hello and welcome to Legislative Report. I'm State Representative Jason Ortitay of the 46th District in Allegheny and Washington counties. We all expect a quality education for our children, which starts with great teachers. One organization working toward protecting excellent teachers is the nonprofit group Students First. Joining me today to discuss their mission is Ashley DeMauro, State Director for Students First in PA. Ashley, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining me. I know in my district we have a lot of questions about education, teachers, evaluations, all sorts of things, all the way ranging up to Common Core, so I'm glad you could join us today. There's a couple things I wanted to walk through, but first I want to give the audience a chance to get to know you a little better, so if you could tell us a little bit about your experiences and some of the positions you've held along with the job that you currently hold.
Sure, thanks so much. So I'll start by saying that I'm the State Director of the nonprofit group Students First in Pennsylvania. We are a group that we have the mission of making sure that all students have excellent teachers and excellent schools, and we do that by changing state laws and policies to make sure they have students' best interest in mind. Previous to this, I did work here for the House of Representatives on the Education Committee, and I was also the Director of Government Relations at the Pennsylvania Department of Education.
So you have quite an extensive background in this field.
Yes, I do.
Well, it's great. It'd be great for our viewers at home as well. Like I said, there's a lot of issues that I want to discuss today. One of the top issues that I get, especially when I was campaigning, was door to door when I would run into a teacher, and they'd always talking about the teacher evaluation process. Now, you were part of putting the teacher evaluation process in. Can you kind of walk me through what the teacher evaluation process is and some of the thought behind it?
Sure. So in 2012, the General Assembly passed legislation that established the new educator effectiveness system that we have. This replaced the old system, which was a simple thumbs up or thumbs down system that was solely driven by classroom observation. So the new system is truly data driven. It's based in part on observations in the classroom, but then it's also based on multiple measures of student achievement. So we look at student achievement on test scores, but we also look at growth. So we're giving teachers credit for if they're growing students year over year. It's a much more complex system that reflects the complexity of the teaching profession.
Is there a percentage breakdown that these teachers are evaluated on, and then what's the end grades that the teachers can receive?
So for the most part, it's 50% based on observation and evidence, and then 50% based on the multiple measures. And that 50% multiple measures breaks down even further. Some of it is a building level measure, so we make a statement that all of the teachers in a given building have something to do with the climate in that building and the success of that building. There is also 15% that is teacher-specific measures. So those are the actual kids in a teacher's classroom counting towards that teacher's evaluation. And last but not least, we have 500 individual, very different districts in the state. So there's a portion that is called elective data, which can be chosen locally to reflect the needs of the local school.
Now, people always talk to me that teachers have to be teach to the test because we have standardized testing. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, my theory is when you have a system that is all aligned, then teaching to the test is simply teaching. If you have state standards, aligned assessments that actually measure what is being taught on the standards, and then you have a curriculum that aligns to that, teaching to the test simply does become teaching, and then what's measured by the test is what the students have learned.
That's great, and I really want to get into a little bit about our PA core standards a little bit later, but I want to talk to you about how the end grades are for the teachers in this evaluation process actually work and how they're measured at the end.
So the previous system simply had a satisfactory or an unsatisfactory, so you were either a thumbs up or a thumbs down. The new system seeks to change that, and teachers will now be rated on a 4-tiered rating scale. So you can either be distinguished, proficient, needs improvement, or failing. And that really allows principals and those who are doing the evaluations to parse it out a bit more and give teachers more meaningful feedback.
Now, some of the feedback that I hear is we focus a lot on the bottom, and a lot of people say, well, if they're at the bottom of that scale, what happens to those teachers? Can you walk us through what kind of plan we put in place for them so they can improve?
Absolutely. When the bill passed in 2012, language was inserted. If a teacher ends up in a needs improvement, which is the second from the bottom, it's not a gotcha kind of a system. It's meant to help improve teachers and give them the support that they need. so they will be given an improvement plan to try to pull themselves out of the bottom. Failing teachers will also be counseled, but oftentimes if they aren't cutting it, they may be dismissed if the local school district chooses to do that if they're not performing.
Okay, so there is a process in place for that?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to walk by that. But while we're talking about teacher evaluations, there is a bill that's coming to the floor at some point in time. It's called the Protecting Excellent Teachers. It's HB 805. I am a co-sponsor of that bill, and one of the reasons that I did that was because that I felt that teachers do need to be protected for the job that they do, and we need to make sure that the great teachers stay.
Right.
But I want to open it up to you, allow you to kind of give an overview of what the bill actually does, and then go ahead and feel free to discuss it. And I'll ask you questions in between.
Absolutely. So current state law simply says that if a school district has to reduce their staff, a reduction in force or a furlough, they have to do it in inverse order of seniority. So that basically means if you're the last teacher hired, you're the first one fired in the event that there needs to be a reduction in force.
No matter what.
No matter what. No regard to performance, effectiveness, nothing. Simply your years of service.
Even if you're in a like say you're an English teacher and you're one of the core subjects, you're the first one out no matter what.
So it also depends on how locals decide to furlough teachers. Under the current state law, we don't give them the opportunity to go in kind of with a scalpel, as you're mentioning, and say we have an economic issue and we need to maybe reduce by 3 or 4 teachers. Under current state law, they have to curtail and alter entire programs to get around the burdensome state law that we've created for them. So what we often see is the cutting of arts programs, music programs, programs that kids and parents alike really support in order to do a reduction in their force. So
this is something that, if passed, would give the school boards flexibility to kind of go in there and say, okay, we don't need to cut an entire program because of this. We can get rid of certain teachers based upon this evaluation process.
Absolutely. So it does that, and then when they do make that decision, it would be based on the evaluations. So we would be actually protecting excellent teachers regardless of their years of service, and really reducing staff at the bottom of the 4-tiered rating system before we get into the top tiers.
Okay, that's great, because again, that's why I signed on to be a co-sponsor of this bill, because we need our great teachers to stay here, and we can't afford them to go somewhere else just because they were the last ones hired.
Absolutely.
With that, I want to move to some of the current projects you're working on. Again, one of the big questions I always get asked is about PA core standards, and you know a lot about that. So I'll let you speak to that.
Well, a little history. Several years ago, Pennsylvania, along with many other states across the nation, adopted what were called the Common Core standards. And those were new, rigorous state standards for reading and math that were developed in part by the National Governors Association and several other groups. So it was a locally driven project that took on a national scope. In 2012 as well, Pennsylvania went and revisited those standards and revamped them a little bit, took into account Pennsylvania teachers and parents' viewpoints and thoughts on that, and replaced the old Common Core standards, which were the same for many states, with the PA Core standards. So slightly different, slightly updated, more responsive to Pennsylvania needs.
Now, this was something they probably should have changed the name to, right? Instead of keeping it the same.
So I would have recommended changing the name because the name core was just so inflammatory based on the Common Core.
Right.
And so Pennsylvania did the right thing. They went back, they examined, they listened to Pennsylvanians and made some changes. And I will say we had state standards before. It was not a new concept. We've had them since the 90s. And basically standards are a statement about what students should know and be able to do at various points in their career. So it's really more of a floor rather than a ceiling.
Well, we have a little bit of time left. I just want to give you the opportunity to speak a little about some of the current projects and tell me what you're working on.
Yeah, we're engaged on a lot of the same things that you are right now. As we come towards June and we're talking about the budget and funding for schools, we're making sure that we're actually funding based on student needs. So we're working towards a fair student-focused funding formula so that we're actually funding students, not necessarily systems. But then we're also working towards related accountability and reforms that go with that. Money is not a silver bullet. So we think bills like the Protecting Excellent Teachers Act and other accountability measures are needed as well. So we'll be working on those.
Well, that's great. I appreciate the time you've given us today, and I'm sure we'll have you back in the future to talk a little bit more about this. But that's all the time we have for today's program. I'm State Representative Jason Ortitay. If you need any assistance with any government matter, feel free to contact me at my local office. The address and number will be shown in just a moment. Thanks for watching, and please join me next time for Legislative Report.